Okay, hi. Welcome again. Today I'm making another tutorial after a very long time. This is going to focus on really being able to create users in DHIS2, roles and permissions. We'll talk about um, organizational unit, how you set that one up, then how you develop your data elements, your data sets, and using the data capture app, and also using the data visualization app. And we, at the end of this tutorial, we are going to develop a dashboard that will provide data. And if time permits, we would look at also doing some API integration so data can be updated via external using the API. Okay, so yeah, let's begin. So I am using here the latest DHIS2 version 2.41. So as always, the username and password, if you are just starting from fresh, is admin, and password is district, lower cases. So if you click on this icon here, you're going to see the user info, and we are on DHIS 2.42.1. To be able to run DHIS2 with this version, you require Tomcat version 10 and minimum of Java version 17 and above. You can use the OpenLogic Java. Yeah, so that's what we have here. So now let's just go back to the work that we are supposed to do today. So if we click here, the interface is a bit different now, but you can click on this browse apps to show you all these icons here. And the first thing we have to do is to go to the maintenance app. You can search at the top here, and that's it there. Just press enter, and this gives us the maintenance app. So the first thing maybe we would want to do is to create the organizational unit. So here we have organization unit, and we always have as the hierarchy from top to bottom. So level 1 is the highest organization unit. So example, you look at country level. If it is country, I'm in Sierra Leone, so you have Sierra Leone as the unit. Then you have districts as the level 2 units. You have chiefdoms as level 3, and as the case may be. So but you can also apply it in different scenarios. If you are dealing with, let's say you have a school that you are implementing this for, and the school will be at the highest, the name of the school will be at the highest unit, and maybe you might have departments, and there might be the second level, and inside those departments you might have subunits, and those can be level 3 as the case may be. So here we are going to deal with the typical, health structure that we have in Sierra Leone. So the first unit is going to be Sierra Leone. And so we are going to just give that name Sierra Leone. The code is optional. You can specify that if you want to specify, but that's not really important here. Opening date is very important. When should we start? So let's say this is going to start from we want to start inputting data from June, 1st of June. So anything beyond that, you cannot enter data that is beyond 1st of June if you have set the opening date to 1st of June. So it's from 1st of June and onwards. We can leave the closing date as it is, and some of these other information we can leave them for now and just click save. So here we have added our first organizational unit. So here we have Sierra Leone, and that is level 1. So now, whilst we are on this, we can create the level 2s, other levels. I'm just going to create here 2 districts. One will be Bo district, and the name will be that. The short name, I'll also just give it Bo district, and we also just want to restrict it from 1st of June this year. And so we have level 2, we have Bo, and we also let's create another one called say Bambali. Okay, and let's set the opening date also to 1st of June. Okay, now we're doing this manually, but if you have already a hierarchy developed, you can import from a CSV file, and that should be able to bring in all your organization units in. So we want to have the next level to chiefdom. So we click on example Bo, we can add 1. And let's say I'm going to just put here Kakwa chiefdom. And yeah, let's set it also to this time and save. So under Kakwa chiefdom, let's have one health facility that is under Kakwa. So we click on Kakwa, and we are going to just call this one, say this is our say Cont MCHP. Now this is not really a real facility. You can provide that, and let's set the date. Then also here, if you want now, because the health facilities have locations, you can specify some location there. Okay, and this longitude and latitude, I'm not sure is correct, that falls in Bo, but we can always come and modify that. Okay, so we have one health facility in this chiefdom, and here you have this Macont MCHP. So we can add another, say, I'll just call it, say, Joe CHC. These are fictional names, not really actual CHCs or health facilities. So here we can have something there. There. All right. So that's it about the organizational hierarchy. You can always look into the documentation and learn really more about how you create and manage these hierarchies. Okay. Now, once you have your organizational structure, the next is that we need to look at is to do our data sets and data elements. So here you have data elements and data sets. Data elements are your questions. So if you are familiar with ODK or Kobo Toolbox, how really you set, like you have your form. The form is going to be like your data element, okay? Inside the form, you have questions in those forms. These are your data elements. That's very simple, okay? So just understand these two. All the others, you get to really understand them later in future. But what is important now is to understand the data element, and the data sets here. So let's have a scenario wherein you have a data set, You want to capture attendance of all health facility workers in each health facility, attendance, daily attendance. So at the end of the day, whoever comes in, they have to provide a summary of, let's say, how many nurses came in, how many doctors, um, how many staff in total that were actually present in the health facility. That's what we want to do. So first we come and create our data elements. The first one we want to have is we want to have say the nurses. So we have let's say nurses. Let's just have attendance nurses. Okay. And so this will be, let's call it health facility, HF, attendance for nurses. And yeah, now so we skip all these ones. What is important are the required fields. Domain type is going to be, it's an aggregate because aggregate, you are collecting summaries, aggregated data. Tracker is individual units that you are looking at. Okay, so just to have those clarifications there. Here we are looking at aggregated data. So we want to, example, look at if it's 5 nurses today that were present in one health facility. So that's what we want to collect, 5. So we select aggregate here. Now the data type here, we have different data types here. So here you have health facility attendance. For nurses, we're expecting to have numbers here, but you can look at the different data types: time, number, interval, integer, positive integer, negative integer. So it's important to have these ones. Now, because attendance is going to be people, persons, right? We cannot have number here because number is going to take like decimal places. So somebody can input, example, 5.5, which should still be a valid input, but that's not what we want. So to ensure data quality begin from the start, you can put validation rules, but even the data type is good to get them right. So here we have integer, which will just give us like whole numbers. And aggregation type is going to be sum. You have all these different aggregation types here. And category combination, these ones we'll not talk about them, right? So here we are going to have this created, and we can save. All right. Then we can also go and add for attendance. Let's say this is attendance for, let's say, doctors. Okay. And at the health facility, how many doctors were present today? Now we're also looking at aggregate, and this is going to be integer, and we can just create that. And let's say we have one other data element. We want to just capture the total of everybody, including nurses and doctors. We'll talk about validations, data validations later, but we just want to, you have a field that they can, so if you have 5 nurses, you have 5 doctors, and you have, 10 or 20 other workers there, total is going to be, 5, 10, 20, you have 30, 35 workers in total. So we would have this attendance, say, all staff, okay? And here we'll just put this, and this is also going to be an aggregate, and this is going to be integer. And let's save. So we have these 3 data elements, or our questions, that we want answers for on a daily basis. Okay. So then we come to our data set. Now the data set is going to just combine these into like a form. So here we click on add. Our data set, we can just call it, say, health facility attendance. Okay, you can spell this one in full and say HF attendance. Short name, if we want, we can just give it, say, HF attendance, but let's just leave it as it is right now. And here, what we're going to do is, if you scroll right to the bottom, you will see this data element. So when you're developing, you will see a series of data elements in your list, but then you have to select which of these questions or data elements that should appear in this your form, which is like your data set. So you can select the ones that you want and you can click here, and when it moves to this end, it means that they should be included in this your data sets that you are creating. All right, and that is what we have. Then here at the bottom, we need to select the organization unit to which the data should be applied. So here we can this should show here for some reason, I don't know. But if we search here for, say, Sierra Leone, and here you would see this hierarchy that we have. So if we want, example, to just restrict this data set to these two forms, these two facilities, we can do that. Or if we want to apply to all health facilities, then we can select that. Okay. So yeah, that's it there, and let's click on save, and then we have our data set. Now, I think one of the things that we needed to look at is, let's go back to edit this data set, is the periodicity. So right click on this, come to edit. We want this data set to be completed on a daily basis. Okay. So here, one of the key things that is important, if we come to this days after period to qualify for timely submission, we can put here 0 because we want on the same day, they can enter data for that present day. If we put example here 15, it means you can only enter data 15 days for a particular day, only 15 days after that day has lapsed, which we don't want. Okay, so we want to put here 0, so you can, if today is 26th, it means you can come to the form and enter data for 26th. If this is 1, you are going to only be able to enter data for yesterday, because today will not be a valid one. So let's put this here to 0. Periodicity, we are going to change it now to daily. Okay, it's no longer monthly. Now, data input periods, if you want to restrict, when they that they can input data, you can set those ones. That's fine, but let's leave it as it is. And here, so we have that. We can save also these changes. I think this thing. Let's see. So let's set this. Okay, this is selected there. So we save that one. So the period is now on a daily basis. We can input data. So you can also modify this, the design data entry. You can have, it's currently set to the default normal format, but you can have compact, all these other forms, which will not go into deep for now. All right. So we have our data set. Now, the next thing is to have a user that should actually be able to update or populate this data set. For now, by default, this data set, it's not accessible. If we look at the sharing settings, public, nobody. All right. say anyone can find, view, and edit this data sets. So if we look here, you can specify users or groups who can actually have access to the data sets. We don't have any user who is really who can, like, a data officer. So we can go and add them there. Then we come back to this form and allow them to create. For now, we can just add admin. Admin can now view. So if you look at the metadata, they can edit and view, capture and view. So by default, even the admin cannot capture data here as long as you add so when you create it. So if we set for this user example, it means they can now access this health facility dataset and be able to capture data. Okay, so let's modify this public access to no access in terms of data capture and view. But the metadata, anyone can find and edit metadata. You can set this to edit and view, or just can view only. All right. So that's it. Let's go back to, let's just pause we'll come back to the dataset section and go to the user management and try to create a user who is a data officer who can capture data. So we'll come back and assign that user to this form and be able to enter data. Okay. So we can search here for users, and you would see users here. And so we can create users, roles, and groups. What we want to do is we want to create a role. If you look at the roles, the only role currently present when you do the new installation is your super user. But let's create a role called, I'll call this one data officer. Okay, and that'll be the name. I'll just give that as a description, data officer. Now, what can they do here? Metadata attributes, it's not really what we are focusing on, okay, in terms of metadata. So elements, they can add or update data elements. No, that's not what we are looking at, because the expectation is we already developed these data element data sets, and for them, all what they need to do is to just log in and provide the data. So here we can come to somewhere. So under the applications, available applications, we want to give them access to the capture app. We also want to give them access to the dashboard app and data entry app and data, let's give them access to data visualizer app. All right. So apart from that, maps, this, that, all these ones are not for this data user. Tracker authorities, no, we're not dealing with tracker. Be able to export data and all these things. Data skip import, we don't know. Accept data at lower, add org units, add updates data. So here, this is where we want to include them. So they should be able to add or update data values, this one. Okay. So add, update, minimum, maximum data elements, no. Approve data, that's not what we want. Merge, run these ones. Okay, so for these guys, for this role data officer, this is what we want them to be doing, and they should be able to have access to these applications, the dashboard, so they can view also what has been done, the visualizer app. And let's create that role. So we have a role called data officer, and now we can go and create a user and assign to the role data officer. So here we can create one user. I'll just call this user KVSK, and I will just call this test at, let's say, kvsk dot, let's say, com. This is just a fake email. Password, first name kvsk, let's say kvs, and this is Oka, and interface is English. We want to set password for this user. I'll just use district for simplicity, or let me say district 123. Okay, at least lowercase, that's exclamation mark. District 123 exclamation mark. Okay, account doesn't expire. We can leave all these ones blank. Now, data capture and maintenance. This user should be able to capture data, let's say at their level. So if this user is mapped to this facility, we just set them to this facility. If we want them to access this facility also to input data or updates, then we can do that. So for now, I will just leave it to these two, but ideally a user would be mapped to one health facility. In terms of the data capture, data output and analysis, can just select the entire country. Search, we can have that. And now here is where we specify the role of the user. So the role of the user is going to be data officer, and here we select this. And we haven't created groups. You can add the user to a particular group. And yeah, that's it. So we create this user. Okay, so this user is called kvsk, and I will just open another browser to see if we can log in from that user. So localhost 8080 and DHIS. And now let's try to log in with kvsk. So it was district 123 exclamation mark. Okay. So we are logged in as this data officer. Okay, kvsk, and they have access to only these apps that we had specified. So they don't have access to all those other ones. Okay. Now, if we go to capture, you would see here that there is no program. No, it's data entry, not capture. So there's no data set available, right? Because we haven't, the data set that we had created, we haven't added this user to have access. Now, what we will do is we're going to minimize this. Here we are here as admins. So let's go back to the data set. Under the maintenance. So here we have data sets, and we are going to now modify this data set under sharing settings and ensure we have this user so we can search for kvsk. Okay, now you can create a group and assign all those users to a particular group, and you just select here the group, so that will apply to all of them. So here we want to say this user can capture and view the data, and yeah, that's it that we want to have here. Okay, so now if we go back to this user here, kvsk, and try to refresh, now you will see kvsk has now access to the datasets that we have there. Then we can see we assigned that user to only be able to input data for these two units. Okay, so let's say MacComs MCHP, and then now here you have to select the period. Because it is daily, you would see even 26th. Today is 27th, and let's say we select for 27th, 26th, okay, and be able to capture. So if we go right back down, you would see, so let's fill in data for, let's say from 20th to, not from 20th, let's say from, yeah, from 20th to 26th. So we select the 20th, and here you would see those data elements that you had there. These are like your questions. So here we input these values here. So we can say, example, all staff that attended is going to be, let's say we have 23 staff. How many doctors? Say 3. How many nurses? Say 5 nurses. Okay. You can run your validation. We haven't set any validations on this. So it's 0, high, critical ones, medium, and low. They are all 0. So it means you are fine. You can create mark as complete, and that is set in there for this particular day. Now, you can go to the next day. This is 21st now, and also set, let's say this was 13, this was 2, maybe this was 4. Okay, and mark as complete. So that is really what you have in terms of the data collection, the data entry. So you have these users who would come in on a daily basis and just input what these fields were like. Now, this currently doesn't have any validation on it. So I can enter figures that are not really realistic. So if I run validation here, you'll see it doesn't give me any. But -12 is not correct. Okay, we can still mark it as complete, and we'll come back to applying, data validation rules to it. Now, just before we go to the visualization, now this form, you can also update this one dynamically. So let's look here. We have 24th. There's nothing there right now. You can also update your data set, your form, provide data using API. And one of the things you need to first do is we'll just back out and come back to our data set here. Now, if you click on this, you would see show details, and you're going to see the ID of the data set, which is very important. Okay, the ID of the data set. So let's copy that ID. Now, you can skip this section. This is more for if you want to develop custom applications that can aggregate data and push to your application. So I'm just going to have Postman to test the API. Now, I had already set done some testing on this. So let's say to just create or update a data set. So you have your endpoint, API version, using API version 33, and you call this data value set. Now, you have to provide the ID of the data set. So in our case, it's now this one. Then completion date, you can set the completion date. Today is 27th. You can set that. Now the period when you want to update this data. So we are looking at this period, which is 24th. So this data set currently for 24th is empty. If we come to 23rd is empty, but 22nd is, we have that completed there. So let's say we have 23rd, we want to update 23rd via the API, we can do that here. So the period, you have month, year, month, and day. Okay, so this is 2025 08, and the day now we are looking at is 23rd. So we'll put 23. Now the organizational unit you want to update. So we have to get the organizational units. Let's say this is, we are dealing with Macont MCHP, and we can go to our organizational units. So here we have in bulk our this Macont. We can get the ID for this one. This is the organizational unit ID for Macont, and we can specify that one here. Okay. So these are the fields that we have set. Now we come to the data values. So the data values, you have your data elements. Each of them would have IDs, data elements, like your questions. So the IDs, we need to also take those ones and bring them here and set those values. So our data element here, let's go back to, this is the section here. So data element. Now we need to get this all staff. If we look at details, the ID is this one. So we copy this and let's bring that one to this first one. So this will be all staff. Let's say this value is going to be 35. And let's go to the next one. This other data element is going to be what? The doctors ID is this. These are your questions. Okay. And so we set here doctors. Let's say we have 5 doctors, and we have, let's say, nurses. And so we also look at the ID for the nurses. We can show details, and here we have IDs, and that's it. So if you have multiple questions in your data sets or data elements in your data sets, then you can have all those ones set in your program, and you set that once, and all what that will now be actually changing are these values in your application. So if you are doing, you have an external attendance monitoring application that collects individual logs, and you just aggregate that and push that to DHIS2. So if that's correct, this is in the body section in JSON format. In the authorization section, we need to specify, you can choose the type of authorization. DHIS2 supports basic authentication. We can have that user there, say KVSK, that user that we have created, and we can provide the password, which was district 1, 2, 3 exclamation. Okay, and that should be the user. So you need to specify the authorization and specify the body like this. So if we send and it's a post request, you will get a response that this is okay, import was successful, success, how many was imported, 3 was imported, 0 updated, and that. Now, if we go back to this field and try to refresh. Okay, now let's go back one step. So 23rd we did for the 23rd, so we have 22nd. Now we have 23rd, we have this data updated here, 35,510, which was in our API. Yeah, so 35,510. We can change this, let's say to, this is the doctors, let's say we change this to 2, and if we submit that, now you get a status of success, but then you see updated is 1, updated 2 ignored. So it means the only data that changed was this particular data element here that changed. Okay. So let me just pause this. Okay, so yeah. So if we if we make those changes, you would see, let's go 25th, 23rd again, that this value has now changed. Okay. Now, if we want to update the next day's record, all what we need to do is in our API, so this date becomes now, instead of 23, 24, and we can just play around with some of these values here. Okay, so maybe here we only had 1, and here we had 6, and save. Okay, and you will see that 3 imported. So that's it about the API. You can look more into the documentation about the APIs, depending on what really you want to achieve. All right. So we have these data sets being updated now. We did update for 23rd via the API and also 24th via the API. And let's say 25th, we can also just set that to that value, and 26th we also set to this value. Yep. Now we need to visualize this data. So as admins, we are going to create the charts and visualization, the dashboards. So now we have our data set, we have data in it. If we come to the visualizer, data visualizer, now one thing you're going to observe is you're not going to have data. So if we just try to visualize, example, the health facilities and these data elements, let's if we update or hide, doesn't matter. Let's change the period to, instead of this month, let's go to, let's say, week, and say this week. And now let's get the organization unit. Let's say we want to get these organizational units, the combination here, or let's say for these two. Now you're not going to get your data here because you haven't run the analytics. So we need to run the analytics to be able to update the data that has been entered into the system before you can see this here. All right. So I'll just open another tab here and just come back to this, and let's go to the should be usage, and no, not usage analytics. It should be under data administration. Yes, it's under data administration, and we come to analytics tables, and you can skip some of these like enrollments because we are not dealing with enrollments right now. We are not dealing with tracker, we are not dealing with events. We can skip those ones, and we click on start export. So this is going to get the data that was entered, load it into the analytics, and we can now use that for visualization. All right. Normally, like the server is set up so that these run as cron jobs, like on daily basis, maybe at the middle of the night. So you don't have to come and manually be generating the analytics. So if we come back to our page and click on update, so you see now here we have these values here. But then what we want to do is we want to get, let's change this from pivot table. Let's get column charts and get like a time series. And yeah, so let's do individual days. Change this period from this week to days. So let's have the last 7 days. Okay, and update that. So there you have like the 20th, 21st, 22nd up to 26th. But then here we see the data that we have provided for this should not be correct. So that's where we're going to now deal with data validations. But this is your chart. Let's save this for now and call this one as attendance and health. Let's call this health facility attendance, staff attendance. Okay. Description, you can provide some description there. That's fine if you like. So this will show the most it will show the last 7 days. So next week you will only see the last 7 days, but you can modify that. Now it's a combination of these two facilities here that you want to have, but you can modify those organizational units maybe in filtering in your filters. So yeah, we have our dashboard, your data visualization. You can play around as long as you have your data. You can do a whole lot here. All right. Now we want to we can let's modify this just to have 3 charts. So we can modify this, have 3 charts. So this is all staff. We can save this as all staff, and we can do some sort of if we want, we can change the legend and those things, style, series. You can change the title. It's currently auto-generated. We can put it to something to, let's say, health facility attendance, say all staff. Okay. And if you want to have a subtitle, we don't need that. You can have that and do a whole lot of customizations here. So now you see that this title will be the one that shows in the dashboard. And now we can save this file. But then what we can do, we can also have another chart for the doctors and another chart for nurses. So we can duplicate this rather than going to create another one. We can save this as, and we can do this, save this as doctors. Just say doctors and save that. But then we now modify the data sets. So it's no longer all staff. We need only the doctors, and we are looking at the same periods. And yeah, so we can also go to the title. Let's modify that. Let's modify the title here. This will be doctors. Okay. And if you want to give them custom graphs, that's fine. And we save this. Then we can also save as now, instead of doctors, this would be nurses. Okay. And we save that, but then change the data sets to nurses. And we can change the label. This will be nurses. Okay. And yeah, save that. And we have it saved. So this is just ad hoc. If you want, you can change the different, you know, chart types. That's what you want, but obviously you can always do depending on what you want. This is time series we're looking at, so a column chart is better. But yeah, that is what you have there. Okay, so we have three charts in our in DHIS2 we have created. We can go and now develop a dashboard around that. And as an admin, we see for the dashboard, when we're in the dashboard page, you can add a dashboard here. And let's give it a title. This is going to be health facility attendance. Okay. Can give it a code, whatever, it's not compulsory. Health facility attendance, the 001. It depends on what you want to provide description about that. And now what is important here is we need to add those charts that we have created into the dashboard. So if you click here, you will see all the visualizations that you have the chart. So we have this is for all, and this is for doctors and nurses. So we click on this all. So there we have it. We can also click on for doctors and also for nurses. And we can move these ones around. So here we have doctors. Maybe we can bring the all down, and so it's just like a drag and drop. You can adjust with those icons there. So let's modify this, reduce this a little, and reduce this a little here. Then expand this section here, right? So this is our chart. We can probably change some of the colors there to just make them different. But let's save this. All right. So we have our chart. Let's edit it. This is not expanding very well. Let's go right to the bottom. Okay. So let's save this. We'll come back to it later, and let's go and just modify the chart colors to make them, to differentiate them a little. For to visualization, it's easier to do it there. If we come to file, we can open a particular chart, and you'll see these are the charts that are there. And we can go to the styles. We can use something, we can change the colors. Let's say we use something like this. Okay. And let's save this. Let's open the other one. So we have done for all attendance. Let's do for the doctors. And let's change something to let's see what we can specify some colors here that we can use. All right, let's just apply that and see. So we just have this for now, and let's save. So let's go back to the dashboard. So we have those ones. At least we have some differentiations now on the chart. Now this dashboard that we have created can add some filters, for example, by org unit. Say we are just interested in Joe CHC. But then you have this issue here, no data available. That okay. So what we have to do is we have to ensure in our, let's go to edit, filtering, allow filtering by all dimensions. Let's see. Okay. So we have, okay, my account. I think we entered data for my account. We didn't enter data for DHIS2. But if we enter DHIS2, it's going to have a cumulative for both DHIS2 and my account. And users can now filter based on the facility that they are dealing with. So that is it about the dashboard. But the only thing is we've done is this user, this data entry, this data officer doesn't have access to this dashboard. Okay, so you see KVSK is not seeing the dashboard. So let's go back as admin, and we have to make sure we share this data. So if you click on sharing, you can specify groups, right? If you have groups, you can say, if you want everybody to have access to this dashboard, that's fine. You can set here and view only. But let's say we want the user KVSK to access it, so we can select this user. Access level, view and edit, it's view only. We don't want them to modify the dashboard, so we want them to only view. And we click on give access. So now KVSK has access to the dashboard. Now if we come to the browser where KVSK is logged in and refresh, you would see that KVSK has access to the dashboard, but KVSK doesn't have access to the data, all right, that we have here. And so what we have to do is the charts. We haven't shared the chart. So in as much as possible, even though we have to share the dashboard, we also have to ensure that the charts, the visualizations are also shared. So hence you see KVSK is accessing the dashboard, but not the charts that we have there. So now let's go back to our charts and go to the visualizer. And here, let's select one of these. So click on File, open this one. And if you come here to the sharing, File, Sharing, Share, the same way that we did, like if we want everybody to have access to this, or you can specify a particular group that should have access. In this our case, we only have a user, so we can set that user to access this particular chart. And that's it. So let's open the other charts for the doctors. Then you can specify also access. So we want also KVSK to access that. And we also have to open this one for a share KVSK here, and also can only view only, right? So once you have those ones set on the chart, if we come to this user now, KVSK user here, and refresh, should now have access to the dashboard. Okay, so those are the things that we have to take into consideration. This is a data officer. They have access to update, to use the data entry app. Okay, here they can use the data entry app. Let's say Joe CHC, and say enter data for 24th, and they can also view data from the dashboard, right? Now, data validation. So you see in our dashboard, we had a data for, negative. So here you see here negative. This is not valid. And we want to apply those data validation rules. Okay, so even before you make the application live, you want to apply those data validation rules so users can they are restricted on how they enter data. Now, let's go to should be under data. We can just check like validation. It should be, it's not data administration. No, it should be under maintenance actually. Yes, maintenance. It should be under maintenance. So here you see validation, okay, validation rules. Now, validation rules here, we don't want the values to be negative. So first of all, the thing that we needed to do was like in our data element. So example, the doctor section, see we chose integer, but then somebody entered a negative integer, which we don't want that. So first of all, we can, from the data element itself, we can set that we only need positive integers from here. Okay, and save. Now, because data element, this value type cannot be changed as it has associated data values. So we'll set this one, and we've already added some data sets in. Okay, so what we are going to do is we can go to the validation rules and ensure that we create some data validation rules on the data sets that we are looking at. So here we want to ensure, first of all, that the total number of nurses and number of doctors are no more than the total number of staff. Okay, so you cannot have 20 nurses, 20 doctors, which is already 40, but then total number of staff is, let's say, 30. So we say, let's call this one, say, all staff attendance. Okay. Let me say maximum staff attendance. DA and CE, maximum staff attendance. And here, let's say this is very critical, high. So what we want is period type is daily. And we have in the data validation rule, you have your left expression, your operator, and your right expression. So the left expression is we want to have the, let's say, the number of doctors and number of nurses. And on the right, we want to have the total number. So we want to say on the left, let's name this one, say, nurses and doctors. And here we want to have data elements is doctors. Then we can use our operators. You can use this plus. Then you say nurses. Okay, so this is going to be our left operator, doctors plus nurses. And let's save that. Then we say it should not be equal to, should be less than or equal to. Okay, not greater than, should be less than or equal to. Now the right operator will be all staff. So this will be all staff and apply that. So here you are saying nurses and doctors should be less than or equal to all staff on the numbers. And let's save that. Okay. So we have our validation set here, maximum staff attendance. Now, if a user comes to import data, say this data officer comes to the data entry and they want to fill in, let's say for 2060, and let's say for my account, it's already filled, but let's choose, let's say Joe CHC. Now, if let's say we put in here all staff is 23, doctors 43, nurses 24. We run validation. We already have here, you see, high priority alerts, maximum staff attendance, doctors and nurses, which is 67, less than equals to staff. So this is not good, right? So whoever is filling in this information, they automatically get alerted on some of these data validation errors, right? So you can always go back and fix this one that, oh no, maybe this was 3 and this was maybe 4. And now if we run, so we don't have any validation rules there, okay? So that is just a simple intro to the data validations, but it's all about planning from the start of developing your questionnaires or your data element data sets. You need to plan properly and see how you structure your information. All right, so that's it. I know it's a long tutorial, but I just wanted to take people through briefly on how they can navigate around DHIS2 in terms of user management, org unit management, the datasets, data elements, the visualization and dashboards. You can always look at tutorials to give you more details on that. If you have any challenges on how this is done, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn. You can send me a message. We can connect. Kenneth via Skoker, and yeah, I'll be happy to provide support. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.